Hi everybody, welcome back to the Tracing Psychological Safety video series with myself and Duana Blomstrom. We are glad to be back and looking forward to talking to you today about an exciting new feature in the software, in the Psychological Safety Works software. So you'll be able to read in all of our articles and online about the software as a whole, but we've included a new feature. And the new feature essentially could be called your aim, your goal, your intention, your pledge. But what we've created is a place in the software for you and your team to commit to what you're going to do to move the team forward. So it's basically, it's a box in the software. But what we're asking you to do, what we're giving you the opportunity to do when you're using the software is when you're in a team meeting, you've got your psychological safety team dashboard up and you're having a conversation with the team about what it looks like for the team and how it's been measured for the team through the data that they've input. You can now say, right, we're here together, let's co-create our goal or our pledge for how we're going to move this team forward in the specific areas that we can now see we need to increase our psychological safety. And the idea is that if you're a team leader, you do not just type it in afterwards, you do it all together in the meeting in the true spirit of co-creation.
Yeah, that is absolutely the number one thing you shouldn't be doing, which is to use it as your own personal workspace. That's probably the worst thing you could be doing. One of the other things we wanted to talk to you about is, or we'll talk to you about a couple of things. One, what to do and what not to do if you're going to be using either our software or a process like it to be managing your humans' emotional well-being. Or as well, we're going to give you a couple of ideas that we've seen from the teams that we've been working with over the last few months when they came up with challenges in terms of the components of psychological safety that we are exposing in the software. And those are a couple of the examples that we've promised you in yesterday's article. But as Fionn said, we're going to be talking about it quite a bunch, no less because one, we want you to understand what we've made. Two, obviously we'd like you on the software, it's what we're making it for, but also because even if you can't get on the software, and we sadly have met over these past few weeks people who had been incredibly well-intentioned, they understood the need for the software, and yet they have had multiple reasons not to be able to get on the software, which is really sad and heartbreaking. So a lot of the things we're saying are there so that we can still incorporate these ideas into your people practice. Obviously not as efficiently, but try and do some of these things because it will be helpful. So number one, don't use it as your own personal writing space. This is not a notepad for a team leader to kind of jot down some ideas. Neither is it a place where you mandate what your team should be doing. It's not a place where you set a task and then you expect your team to be delivering on it. It's not that kind of management anymore, not that kind of a world anymore. You should probably stop doing that in general, but absolutely don't do it in the software. It's a place of co-creation, as Fionn was saying. Then, of course, if you're an agile team, I would advise that you type this thing down and then you make sure that it's correlated directly to your normal ceremonies. If you are opening up the dashboard that we come up with, or you're doing your people practice verbally or by hand in your retro meetings, that's fine, that's great, but those are a lot more rare. And I would say once you've done that, take this as a sprint kickoff or a planning moment, and take this particular action that you've set as one of your tickets or as one of your epics or as one of your user stories. Just transport it, somehow into your working space, whether that's your Trello or your Jira or whatever it is. Just move it in there so that you keep an eye on it. It's not just something you've done in a corner about humans and you can go to the day business. This is your day job. Then if you are doing these meetings, you're not an agile team, you're doing these meetings about using the dashboard or not, about your people once a month or once every couple of weeks, and you still have other team meetings meanwhile, I would say you keep an eye as a team leader on the fact that this remains something that's worked on. It's not just something you said you were going to be doing and then it just never got reinforced or picked up, or some of the actions in there are not being followed on. And lastly, mind how you formulate it. If you have to be the horrible person that goes, did we really mean engagement, or did we mean morale? If you have to be the person that kind of nitpicks at every corner, then be that person as a team leader, because it is never more important. That is your space. That conversation, when you define what your action is as a team, is your space for your team to be involved in their well-being. So if you miss this opportunity and you don't agree on the same terminology and you're not all rowing in the same direction, then you've missed the moment where you would be creating something together.
Absolutely. So Duena had mentioned earlier on in the video that we were going to bring you some examples today. So we're not going to go through all 6 categories, because that would take us a little while, and maybe we'll revisit some of them again, but we wanted to pick out a couple and just give you an example of something we've experienced with teams in the past. So I was going to talk to you about the learning/curiosity component or category. That's where you see those 6 smiley faces on the dashboard, indicating how the strength that your team has in that particular category with regards to how psychologically safe the team is. So if you're looking at the dashboard and you see that learning and curiosity is not in a happy place, it's either in a neutral place or in a sad place, one of the things that we've seen teams do really successfully and worked with teams to do really successfully is to revisit exactly what learning from each other is. And that is being excited about bringing new knowledge to each other and to the team. Not having any fear of bringing new knowledge to each other in the team, not having any fear of suggesting articles, podcasts, books, research, all of those things. How do you do that remotely? It's actually in many ways much more straightforward than it is in person, because in person we chit chat about it, we make notes, we have to go back to our notebook. When we're looking at this remotely and we're using technology as an enabler, we can use, I know that I do it in one of the teams I work in, and I've advised other teams to do this, have a Slack channel, have a channel in your MS Teams where you just share research. And everybody kind of throws in whatever's come up, whatever they found on LinkedIn or been researching as part of their work that day. And the knowledge within the team grows in abundance. And people feel excited by that. You know, we know that learning is one of the key motivators for people.
It is, and we do this ourselves quite a bunch. I would say the only danger there is that you have some form of initial contract on how you're going to be doing this learning and why it's important. Have a little bit of a hey ho, we all love learning, but at the same time, make sure that nobody in the team expects any kind of feedback loop necessarily. Make sure that nobody feels like they have to read something at a certain point. Yes. Make sure you remove those parts where anyone would be forced to impression manage. So just keep that in mind. If you share and you get excited about stuff, you could make things together, you could think of your next steps, you could maybe turn it around and wonder, is this competition that we're looking at? Is this something we could use in something in the future? Connect it to why it's personal to you and that you might get better responses, but don't expect anything out of anyone. You can't really mandate people's enthusiasm about learning, and we are all so incredibly like both busy and tired and in this horrible situation. So it's probably worth having a chat at first. How do we do this learning together? Why are we doing it? Let's go full force.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then another example we were going to give you, in the interest of keeping this short, is we have had teams that have asked over and over again in this time, how do we make sure that we keep our people very engaged and with a high morale? Because the data that was consistently coming out was that, obviously and non-surprisingly, instead of their normal smiley face on morale, they would see at least a neutral or sad face. In fact, I would say to teams that don't see a neutral or sad face to dig deeper whether there's not more impression management happening than they would think, because at this time, having incredibly high morale is probably iffy, if not likely fake. So keep an eye on those smileys. If you see them down, or you see there being a neutral stance and you want to work on it, and that's the only indicator you want to work on as a team, what could you be doing? And one of the sets of actions that you could be taking would be, so in the interest of keeping it as the goal setting theory suggests, short, relevant, emotionally important to your team. Have a chat with them about what they think is going to engage them more. Don't presume that making them play on House Party is going to fix it. Don't necessarily just send some pizza to their house, although do that. I've met a team that did that and they loved it, obviously. It's a gimmick. It's not really, though, necessarily something that's long-term and getting everyone involved. So the point of the set an action together part is not so much that you do something to fix that particular topic. It is absolutely so that you all become invested in attempting to change something of your team dynamic. That exercise in itself is what counts, right? It's not necessarily the effect on it. So don't get hung up on the numbers, the data, the answers to the questions. Just stay focused on, are we building something together? So from that perspective, what I always advise for teams that see a drop in engagement is that the type of action they come up with has to be around something such as, let's organize a blue sky design exercise as to what would keep us engaged. Let's all sit down for an hour, do nothing but figure out what would make us engaged. How do we team build? What should we buy ourselves? What should we think of? Ask your colleagues what they would really like to see happening. Don't presume anything for them. Don't pick up something you've read on the internet. Ask them. Smart people in every team that's working remotely who have read all the stuff, use that learning by having a space to co-create a solution. But your action in itself should be that we take the time and we make the space to think of our engagement as a team. Right, I think that's all we had for today. We're going to keep it short for you. Please read the other article. Please talk to us about it. For now, for the time being, and I will be transparent, it's probably not forever, but for the time being, there's still a COVID-19 aid offer where you can get on the software immediately for free and get all the stuff just so that it keeps teams connected and functional in the new remote normal. Again, not going to last forever. Sadly, we are not of unlimited funds, but for as long as it's there, we're more than invested in helping every team we can. So come talk to us and get in touch. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.